Hey, how you guys doing? It's Lon from the ECOM Zone and I'm back with another video. It is the best news ever. I mean, it's not the greatest, but it's still good. So, I just found a news article that US is slashing the minimus tariff on small China parcels to 54%. So before we were paying about 120% to 150%, depending on what AliExpress was charging us, and now it's back down to 54%. Of course, it's not 0%. Or even 10 or 20% would have been better. But I think 54% we can actually continue selling to the US from China. So this is actually good news for us. White House cuts the minimum tariff on China's shipments to 54%. Tariff reduction follows broader truce announcement after Geneva talks. US de minimis rule criticized for enabling cheap imports and smuggling. The United States will cut the de minimis tariff for low-value items imported from China, a White House executive order said on Monday, further de-escalating a potentially damaging trade war between the world's two largest economies. The tariff relief, which affects big Chinese e-commerce players, including Shein and Temu, follows a deal between Beijing and Washington to unwind most of the duties imposed on each other's goods since early April, after weekend talks in Geneva. So while their joint statement in Geneva didn't mention the de minimis duties, the White House order released later said that levies will be reduced to 54% from 120% for items valued at up to $800 sent from China via postal services, with a flat fee of $100 to remain starting May 14th, which is tomorrow. So carriers can pay either the 54% or the $100 fee per package, and since AliExpress is charging us 50% of the tariff at checkout, it means we will not be paying that $100 fee. The logistics companies or freight forwarders collect those tariff fees from sellers in China in advance. So yes, that's that. So AliExpress will be collecting the fees in advance and then paying that, so we don't have to pay the $100 fee. However, this doesn't mean we should start advertising to the US again. We do need to wait for AliExpress to make those changes and so that the tariffs are actually lowered. So the de minimis exemption allowed items valued at up to $800 and sent from China via postal services to previously enter the US duty-free and with minimal inspections. Most of us will be shipping like parcels under $800. This is why this one is the most important change for us, not really the other one. The other one where they changed it from 145% to 30%, that doesn't really affect us. So yeah, great news for us. We just need to wait for AliExpress to make their changes now. Then we can make an individual campaign on Facebook ads for the US, just in case Trump changes things again. That means if we do switch off that campaign in the future, it won't affect our other campaigns. And I'll probably start doing this with other countries like Australia. So if you look at GBP to Australian dollars, go back to September 2022, £1 would get you about 1.69 Australian dollars. But recently, because the Australian dollars has been getting weaker against the pounds, £1 will get you 2.06 Australian dollars, which is great for UK people traveling to Australia and want to exchange money, right? However, it's not great if Australian people are trying to buy from our website. Since I'm from the UK, my prices are in pounds, and if an Australian customer comes to my website, they'll see Australian dollar prices. However, the problem here is that everything is more expensive for them. So back then, about 2 to 3 years ago, they would pay like £1 to 1.7, 1.8, 1.9x. But the fact that they have to now pay over 2.1 or 2.0 or anything above that, it makes everything more expensive for them. So if you're selling like products that aren't really high perceived value items like jewelry, it's very hard to sell to them because of the currency impact. And this is a big problem for me because back then I used to combine countries into one campaign, an ad set. Now I shouldn't actually be selling to Australia anymore because the conversion rate for Australia is terrible right now. And mainly because of how expensive products are for them on my website. So let's just say you're from the US to AUD. It's kind of hovering. I mean, in 2022, 1 USD will get you 1.43 AUD, but now it's 1 USD to 1.56 AUD. So very small change, but again, the Australian dollar is getting weaker against the USD, so you may have less Australian customers because your prices are default by USD and then it converts to Australian dollars if they're Australian. This also applies to like US to Europe, for example. So let's see the exchange rate. So US to Europe is actually quite a rocky one. So 5 years ago, 0.9, today is 0.9. I mean, it peaked at 1 point, yeah, it just peaked at 1. So 1 USD will give you 1 euros in 2022. However, now it's just back down to 0.9. So not much of a difference. So that's actually good. And then US to CAD, let's see the 5-year chart. So again, this is a good example. So in 2022, 1 US dollar would get you 1.25 Canadian dollars. But right now, it peaked at about 1.45. So that 0.25 difference makes it a lot more expensive for your Canadian customers. And that's why I may actually start splitting campaigns up into countries and also categories, because I'm actually seeing a big fluctuation with sales in different countries because of the currency. But yeah, this is how currency affects sales, and you should be aware of that. But yeah, that's the end of this video. Hope you found it valuable. Hopefully there's more good news to come with the Trump trades. Yeah, maybe they could reduce it more in the future. Anyways, peace.